So welcome everyone. For those who I have not met yet or had the pleasure of talking to and connecting with, I'm Reverend A.C. Churchill. My pronouns are they, them. I am the executive director at Earth Ministry, Washington Interfaith Power and Light, and it is good to be with you on this cold evening. I'm not sure what things are like where you are at, but I'm here at our office in Phinney Ridge, in the Phinney Ridge neighborhood. And I got out just a little bit ago and saw some of the lights. And I saw that this was my first time seeing the lights in the Phinney Ridge neighborhood. And apparently they have a bunch of animals, like different animals in all of the windows. There's otters and orcas and a bunch of amazing creatures. And so I'm wondering if your communities do similar things, if you all have ways that which you celebrate these holiday seasons. So it's good to be with you all. At Earth Ministry, Washington IPL, we do a couple things in our time with one another. And one of the very first things that we do as we begin is take time to acknowledge the land. And so we at Earth Ministry, Washington Interfaith Power and Light, work within the unceded territories of the Northwest Native Nations. Our office is on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present. We recognize that land acknowledgement is one way to resist the erasure of Indigenous histories, as well as to honor tribes and the land itself. As I said, I'm calling from our office, but usually I am working from my home, which is on the traditional lands of the Puyallup people and the Coast Salish in Tacoma. So we're going to, in just a minute, do some introductions of the other staff who will be speaking tonight, and also share some gratitudes for Earth Ministry Washington IPL board members who are here. Before we do that, also wanted to acknowledge and thank those of you for coming tonight. You could be many places and you chose to be with us, and we're grateful for that. In addition, we are super grateful and for the hospitality of the Colleague Connection Group. This is usually their time that they meet with one another and discuss all of the amazing things that are happening. And so we're grateful for their willingness to share some space with us as we do a year in review. So thank you for colleagues. For those of you who are not aware of our Colleague Connection Group, they meet monthly. And they are, that group is facilitated by Kia Colucci, our multi-faith program manager. So if you're interested in connecting with others who are doing great work in their communities, please take some opportunity. Kia will share more about that colleague group. With that, I will actually turn it over to, well, before I do that, I forgot. As you're joining us, please feel free to put your name, your pronouns, your faith tradition, spiritual tradition in the chat so we can see all of the people that are joining us this evening, those in the various communities who are joining us. And while you're doing that, I would invite Kia
I know, I'm
to
working on it,
introduce
Wally.
herself.
Hi, everyone. I think I know almost everyone in here. So I am Kia Colucci. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the multi-faith program manager here at Earth Ministry, Washington IPL. And a lot of my job is just connecting with people in different congregations and working on programming and getting to meet everyone. I'm going to invite, let's see, Sarah. There you are. Sarah, if you could introduce yourself.
Hey there, my name is Sarah Robinson. I'm the advocacy manager for Earth Ministry Washington Interfaith Power and Light. I started last summer, so I'm looking forward to working with all of you who I haven't met yet. I use she, her pronouns, if I haven't said that already, and I am on the lands of the Duwamish people. Is there more you wanted us to say?
No, that's great.
Okay,
Thank you. It's
awesome.
and I will pass it over to our newest addition to the team, which we're excited. Today is her very first day. Um, so please join me in welcoming Maria Thompson as our new development and communications manager. Maria?
Hello, everyone. I am Maria, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am on the traditional lands, unceded lands of the Duwamish people as well in Ballard. And I am looking forward. I'm coming tonight just a newbie, so I have much to learn, and I'm looking forward to participating. I'm so grateful that this timed with my first day. So thank you.
Thanks, Maria, and welcome. Welcome to those who have joined us along the way. I see so many wonderful faces and so many wonderful images and screens and names popping up. It's a joy to have you all here with us this evening. Also, just a welcome to several of our board members. Laura Baumgartner, our board chair, is here. Andrea Mendoza has just graciously taken on the role of our treasurer. I see Victoria Poling, who also was our treasurer for, has completed her service as our treasurer, still on the board though. And Rachel Hackstema is on, who does a lot of work with our board development. So if you have or know people who are interested in being a part of our board and the work that we do, talk to Rachel or me. Either one will work. But it'd be great to do this work with you. With all of that said, let's move into the why you all are here, which is all of the amazing work that's been happening throughout the year. So Kia, I'm going to pass it over to you to start us off. I guess that means I need to share my screen. Hold on one second. Yeah, as I pulled it up, would you tell everyone a little bit about what to expect for this year in review?
I don't want to give it away, but we will be going season by season of all the work we have done. We'll be alternating. It'll be me speaking on the community type of support, and then Sarah and AC will both be speaking about the community advocacy work that is being done. So you'll hear from a lot of us throughout this presentation. Let's see. If you've been to one of our... Siri wants to talk too. If you've been to one of our year-end events before, you kind of know how this goes. We'll talk about what we've done, what we're going to look forward to, and then we're actually going to have breakout rooms. So AC mentioned that usually this is the time for colleague connections, where we share any work we're doing, any questions we have. We're going to have space for that as well in breakout rooms. So if you don't normally join, you'll be able to experience colleague connections as well. And we'll be taking notes. So if anyone has anything that they didn't quite get answered, we'll be able to refer back to them in each of the groups. And one of us will be in the rooms with you, no matter what. Let's see, and there's a lot going on in the chat. AC, if I have screen sharing, I might be able to do it.
You do, and I think I've been able to pull it up. Okay. Thanks. You know, it would have helped if I downloaded it before Kia. That's the trick here, right? Is being prepared and having it prepped, ready to go. But here we go.
Okay. Next slide, please. Okay. Bittersweet note, we're starting off in winter, very early in this winter. We said goodbye to Sister Jessica Zimmerly. She had spent a decade of her life with Earth Ministry in various capacities. And she was our advocacy director by the time she left. That's a lovely photo she took of all of us. What was that? I think it was mine and AC's first time to hold in. So that was quite the experience for us as a team. So we said goodbye to her in February. And then one thing we did was discuss environmental justice in Tacoma at Pacific Lutheran University. We have lots of connections with PLU. So I was part of a mini panel talking to students about different types of community work and advocacy that can be done through a faith lens, a little bit of the history, and kind of exploring, throwing out ideas for what they could be doing to get involved as well. And then one thing, I don't know if this has been made clear to everyone, but Interfaith Power and Light is a national organization. So we are the Washington affiliate for the national IPL. And every year they have what is called the Cool Congregations Challenge. And so there are multiple categories of different like greening tasks, whether it's like community outreach and support, net zero goals, something that's like innovatively been done with electricity or whatever it may be, whatever your project is. There's a ton of categories, tons of different options. That happens every year. It's happening right now. There's a week left to still apply. So if you're interested, I can forward you those emails again. But what I did was I judged in one of those categories. So I got to see different projects happening all over the country, and see all the inspiring things that people are doing in the larger Interfaith Power and Light. Next slide.
So, community support is one of the major works that we do, major areas that we engage in all year, as well as faithful advocacy. So our year started off with introducing and being part of IFAD, which is the Interfaith Advocacy Days, hosted by our coalition partner FAN, Faith Action Network. At IFAD, we hosted our annual, I skipped ahead, Kip, my apologies. Prior to that, we hosted our annual advocacy training workshop where we named our 4 priorities for this past legislative cycle. We focused on recycling and the RAP Act. We worked on amendments to the Growth Management Act, both for planning for a climate-friendly future and an amendment to add environmental justice as a key piece of criteria. And then we also worked on a Toxic-Free Futures sponsored bill of banning toxins in cosmetic and healthcare and health and beauty products. As I was mentioning, we held trainings in Olympia for the Interfaith Advocacy Day as part of our work with FAN, and we're honored to be part of many lobbyists or many advocates and faithful advocates who were in Olympia specifically that day, but throughout the legislative cycle. As I mentioned, we prioritized 4 policies. 2 of them passed. We'll talk about a little bit about them in just a minute. And we supported an additional 5. So this past year was a budget cycle. And one of the pieces of legislation, budgetary pieces that we prioritized or supported was work around trying to pass a transportation study that was fully funded, that added in money to do a study on the removal of what it would in part take to remove the dams on the lower Snake River and what would be needed in terms of transportation and replacement of those dams services, including replacement of irrigation, energy, and transportation. We also supported the high heat, removing of high heat disconnections so that Washingtonians in the midst of extreme weather are not losing access to very crucial utilities. And we're happy that both of those moved forward. There were a couple of additional ones that didn't, but many of them, including one of our priority policies in the WRAP Act, you will see again this coming up year. So in this coming up cycle. So we're happy to continue to be working in the legislature.
I'm muted. Okay, now we're into spring for everything. One big thing we did was we welcomed Katie Harris, who is our contract grant writer. This is the first time that position has existed in Earth Ministry Washington IPL history. So that's very exciting. What I did was I spoke at the Women of Reform Judaism's Pacific District Convention, and that happened in Bellevue this year. And so I got to speak with a lot of women on the topic of Earth Ministry, our history, some challenges that maybe we faced in choosing what we want to talk about, choosing what we want to support, and then answering a lot of questions about Earth Ministry. It was 3 of us talking, so I was just one component of it, but it was very lovely. And then we participated in the Hope for Creation Care Conference in Spokane. This isn't the first time we've gone out to Spokane for this, but it was really good to finally be in Spokane and being able to table. And I'd heard of online at least a lot of the people's names, but it was a great time to actually make connections with their community in Spokane, see them, talk to them about various issues, learn from them how they want us to support them or what they think needs to happen in Spokane, because most of us are over here in the Puget Sound. So it's nice to get feedback from everyone. It was a good opportunity to meet people. And then we gathered for our first silent auction fundraiser. So in spring, we tend to have a fundraiser of some sort. This year, we were getting very creative because it is the 30th year of Earth Ministry Washington IPL. So what we did was we hosted a silent auction fundraiser. And during that, we had a lot of speeches, Q&A from people who were at the start of the organization to talk about their inspiration, what inspired them to begin an organization like this, how they've seen it grow, as well as look through the years at a PowerPoint. So we get to see all kinds of like archived like newsletters, literature that was handed out, photos. And then while that's going on and we're all snacking on everything that we had provided, people were also bidding on different auction items. So it was really fun and unique, and first time I'd ever been part of an auction at all. So that's a way to bring in our birthday. Next slide.
Our faithful advocacy continued in the spring, and one thing that I neglected to mention about the winter and spring faithful advocacy is that we, as part of our work supporting and connecting with community partners, is we can help and work with communities and individuals who are interested in visiting their elected officials, not on, in addition to IFAD. And so I think I saw a couple members from the Whidbey group join in on it this evening. It was a joy to be down in Olympia with the interfaith group on Whidbey Island as they talked with their elected officials. So in spring, we had a project that knew about at the end of last year, but really it started to gain some momentum in coalition work, which is that of calling out and trying to name the potential gas expansion, gas pipeline expansion, the GTN, happening in Eastern Washington. And so one of the pieces that we did is we went with Coalition Partners 350 Seattle to visit Senator Murray's office, calling on Senator Murray to speak out against GTN Express. It took a while to get Senator Murray to speak out. It also took a while to get Senator Cantwell to speak out. However, I did not come in the spring, but eventually both senators have spoken out. Although I'd say that Senator Cantwell's response was much stronger than we were originally expecting. So, and Sarah will have more information about that. Additionally, we celebrated the passage of Planning for a Climate-Friendly Future amendment to the Growth Management Act, which talked about the need for cities and counties to plan for, to be really intentional about reducing emissions, including in their land use development, in their city planning, as well as adding infrastructure for bike lanes and walkways, so that we can begin to move away from individualized or only individualized cars or individualized transportation. We coordinated a multi-state faith leader sign-on letter regarding community safety and GTN Express. Over 350 faith leaders from across Washington, Oregon, and Idaho signed onto this letter, calling for the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and elected officials to prioritize the safety of our community and move away from expanding fossil fuel production. And it was wonderful to see that many faith leaders join together. In addition, our staff, along with coalition partners in Eastern Washington, taught a course on the GTN Express, and also why fracked gas, why fossil fuels are not always or not faithful responses, and are not sustainable, renewable energy sources at the Spokane Community College. And you'll see one of our other transitions this year was the transition of our former operations manager, Maddie Smith, in several of these pictures as well. So it was good to have them leading those conversations.
Okay, now we can get into summer. As you saw, winter and spring were very packed. Summer was just a welcoming season where we got to be out and have more, spread out type of fun rather than running around with the legislative season. And one of the first things we did was we welcomed Sarah Robinson, who is our new advocacy manager. And it's been great. Lots of stuff she was put right into the middle of, with GTN going on especially, and she's handled it beautifully, and everything that's happened with the decision. It's just been amazing having her on our team. This was the second summer in a row that Earth Ministry Washington IPL served as summer teaching faculty at Holden Village. So this time AC just went by themselves and had a wonderful time meeting people, learning new things. And that's that photo right there. And then we also participated in the West Seattle Ecology Fair. And this was something we don't, we don't participate in a lot of fairs where you just go to table and learn about what's happening. We've done a few in the past, but never in West Seattle, even though a lot of us are right there. So when we got that invitation to go out and learn about what West Seattle was doing, what they hope to do, get in connection with more community out there, we took that opportunity in the late summer to do that. Pretty chill summer comparatively.
So, as Kia just mentioned, I began this past summer after 20 years or so of researching, writing, presenting, and eventually teaching in religion and the environment and justice building work in higher education. So it's been a pretty amazing shift over to working in advocacy, where education is certainly a huge component, but there's so much relationship building and just a wonderful existing network. It's really been a privilege to enter into all of the tremendous work that's been done over the past 30 years and just walk on in. So the first item on the summer faithful advocacy agenda is both supporting community members and testifying in a federal listening session. So there was a State Department listening session in the midst of the renegotiation of the Columbia River Treaty, which is up right now between Canada and the US. Both countries are also spending time to understand and reflect on the importance of involving tribal communities in this renegotiation, as well as especially among our coalition partners, we're talking about the importance of ecosystem, the ecosystem as a piece of the renegotiation that's really crucial. So supporting ecosystem well-being for the renegotiation of the treaty, in addition to dam flows of cool water and flood prevention, etc., the things that were part of the original Columbia River Treaty. So it was a wonderful, just tremendous privilege to be then invited to come and speak at a State Department meeting and also hear what else was happening in that conversation around this treaty renegotiation. And so that's an ongoing conversation, but this was one piece of it. The other two pieces of summer faithful advocacy, I'll pass the mic back to AC to talk about.
Just, updating these, I'm going to skip to the third one and say that at the very beginning of the summer, very end of the spring, we also celebrated with coalition partners the signing of the Toxic Free Cosmetics Act into law. That was a beautiful coalition of impacted community members wose especially community members of color, women of color, those immigrants, and those who have recently migrated, or whether it be forced migration or have moved for other reasons. Often when they come, when they transition to new places, they're looking for products that are help them maintain their spiritual and faith practices, which is one of the pieces that we didn't talk very much about in terms of this Toxic Free Cosmetics Act, was that a lot of the products that were being that are have higher concentrations of toxic chemicals in them are often being targeted towards communities of color and women of color, and those who are maybe perhaps trying to keep sacred materials, prayer shawls, prayer pillows clean after they've traveled long distances. And so this particular coalition was a beautiful connection of a number of different health groups, cosmetologists, and others who were committed to people being able to have health and beauty products that aren't harmful. Additionally, we helped to support some Gonzaga and Gonzaga Prep students who were trying to get a meeting with Senator Cantwell. This particular event happened while we were in Spokane, and the students had several meetings set up, and each of them ended up being the representative for Senator Cantwell's office didn't show up. And so we helped the Gonzaga students and the Gonzaga Prep students to discern what steps they wanted to take. And I'm not sure if we have already shown the picture or if we'll get the picture up at some point, but the students decided to, even though it was the weekend, go outside of Senator Cantwell's office and hold signs up showing that they are, even if the meeting was not going to be attended, they were going to show up and make their presence known. And we are grateful both for their willingness to continue living out their call to a clean and healthy environment. And also Senator Cantwell's aides did respond finally and were able to set up a meeting. So I'm grateful that we were and honored to be part of their discernment in calling for the protection of their community.
Okay, and now we are into fall. So as part of our 30th year in existence, we've been celebrating a lot, doing different fundraisers and different gatherings. So in autumn, we had our Return and Restore, an autumn gathering. And that was another fundraiser where we all just got together, and it was like a picnic, playing games, just hanging out kind of. It was very relaxed, more about fostering connection with each other. And that was our focus. But during that, we held our first annual congregation awards ceremony. So we had 7 different categories, from those working on net zero goals, those working for environmental justice that were that were like standouts in their community, those who got creative with food and gardening. There are 7 different categories, so we had winners there. And that was the first time we'd ever done something like that. And so each congregation was able to share their story, and have someone come up and talk more about all the efforts that they're doing, maybe give a little bit of history or insight into how everything began, and how it got to the point of being given the award at our ceremony. And so that was really lovely to have different communities be able to share what they're passionate about and all the work that they've been able to accomplish, whether it was something that just got started this year or it's something that is many years coming, and is just being very successful now. And then, today we welcomed Maria Thompson, the Development and Communications Manager. So we had a day in office. Almost all of us were in office, but we all had time to gather with Maria, just to say hi, get to know her a little bit more. Yeah, so this is literally the first day, and I'm sure she's going to be fantastic. Very excited to be here, very enthusiastic, lots of energy, which is just wonderful to be around.
So for Fall Faithful Advocacy, we've had a really rich season. We co-sponsored the All Our Relations Snake River Journey with Sasela, an Indigenous-led nonprofit, and a number of community partners from Intercommunity Peace and Justice Center to Sierra Club to a whole wonderful group of coalition partners to organize 6 stops across Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. And our own Reverend A.C. Churchill was responsible for coordinating the first inaugural stop in Olympia. Our sister congregation there is United Churches of Olympia. They were wonderful hosts for this gathering, where you can see in the photo in the middle here, the end of that event included prayers from Auxiliary Bishop of Seattle, and I'm going to get his name wrong. I'm sorry. Do one of you have his name more? Is Eusebio S?
Oh yes, it just faded for me too.
Yeah.
It's Eusebio Elizondo.
Thank you,
Andrea.
Elizondo. Thank you. So we had Catholic bishop, we had Reverend A.C. Churchill, we had Jode Gowdy of Yakima tribal community, and he is a former chairperson of the community, as well as just a phenomenal speaker. And this first event in the journey is featured in our Earth letter coming up in your mailbox or in your email box very soon. That is on its way. And so that was a very important part of the work, as soon as, that's been happening all year, that culminated in this beautiful collaboration between so many interfaith partners and so many environmental community partners in supporting tribal priority for salmon return. And that all our relations naming has to do with that interconnected, relationality between the salmon and all of the living beings that depend on salmon for their lives across the Northwest. Mm. So that was first. The GTN Express, you've heard a little bit about. If you're not familiar with the issue of the Gas Transmission Northwest Express pipeline expansion, that's been in the docket of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission as a proposal for about 2 years. And just around the end of October, they passed it. Mid to late October, they passed it. And what that means is increasing the volume of fracked gas from British Columbia through a transmission system pipeline that goes through Idaho, Eastern Washington, down through central, southern Washington, into Oregon, and even just to the northernmost tip of California. And so the work that we've been doing in coalition to try to stop the GTN Express proposal from passing had to do with trying to support community safety. And so as the issue was clearly coming to a head, I worked with some community partners in Spokane, both to do an educational event as well as to hold a vigil. So you can see the topmost picture is of the vigil to honor the people in the area, honor the communities that did not intend to wake up and have more danger or risk of explosion from old pipelines adding 50% more gas in an old pipeline. And so we made representations of the current blast zone as a semicircle and the expanded blast zone of what the expansion represents, because talking about expanding a pipeline is a super confusing term. And it's one of the ways that fossil fuel projects are sort of going past some of the ways that people have effectively stopped new pipelines. They're like, well, we'll just expand an old one, and then there are fewer regulatory hoops to jump through to do that. So now the coalition is pushing back and appealing this decision. And so this event was also to sort of bring attention to the fact that even though the proposer of this pipeline said nobody along the pipeline's route really cares, this was an event with at least 30 people showing up to say they care. This is going within a mile of their homes, and they don't want extra burden of risk in their communities. And here we have the State Department listening session on the Columbia River Treaty, which I talked about for the summer. So participating in Columbia River Treaty elements. And so I've talked about that already. I don't think there's more there. But if you are interested in learning more, there's a recent conference called One River Ethics Matter. And I have the links to view any part of that conference if you are interested in learning about what's happening in the Columbia River and why it matters to touch into that process and understand it better.
Okay, now we're going to give just quick little, to sum it up, for community supports. So we had monthly colleague connections. And again, that is a monthly space for people all across the state, whether you have a green team or you do not, or you wish you did, on whatever stage you are at, to come together and talk about different questions you may have about greening a congregation, to share wins, to share future plans, and just to be with one another once a month. And we have that on the first Thursday of every month. So again, this time is usually when it happens, but this is an expanded version of that. We had 9 Earth Ministry Washington IPL organized events. We had a total of 24 speaking engagements. And that could be anything from doing a workshop for a green team, to being guest preachers of some sort, speaking at a conference, whatever it may be. We had 24 in total of those this year. We had 2 fundraising events, and one new thing we did was 1 award ceremony.
And in faithful advocacy, there were 20 faithful advocacy actions. 2,800 plus individuals put their faith into action through these actions that we've invited people to do, and 45 organizational letters sent. Go team.
Sarah, would you say something about I know this is a little off script, but say something about the variety of organizational letters that we send? This is not something we talk about that we do very often, but we get asked to sign a lot of organizational letters that other organizations have partnered with. So can you list maybe just a couple of the topics that we've recently signed some letters on?
Sure.
Or is it putting you on the spot?
No, not at all. I have the list right in front of me because we're doing so many in this season. It was actually really impressive. The week after Thanksgiving is now to be known as Organizational Letter Sign-On Week because there were so many letters to sign recently. So we have signed letters to urge the state of Washington to strengthen draft regulations to better mitigate potential potent methane emissions from landfills. So that's just one. We had one that is limiting air pollution and dealing with the newer energy production facilities that deal with hydrogen, and asking the EPA not to allow fossil hydrogen, so fossil fuel-based hydrogen facilities, to have the same regulations as green hydrogen facilities. We've asked the EPA to refer the decision about GTN Express to refer that to the CEQ so that instead of simply passing, there's an opportunity for further environmental quality considerations to happen on that. We have talked about salmon protection and climate commitments, other pipelines in other parts of the United States, trying to join together with other communities that are dealing with something similar to the Gichin Express problem and saying, hey, we've got your back too. We also, let's see, supported legal rights to Salish Sea and Southern resident orcas, to see how that might help turn the dial towards greater protection of these phenomenal and, you know, immeasurable beings that share our region. That's just a few.
I know.
I can go down the list. That's just within the past month or so.
Thank you so much,
so
Sarah,
many more. Yeah,
expanding on that.
Of course.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and click on over to the next slide.
Okay, and now we will talk about what's coming up. So one thing we've been brainstorming is different ways to engage our community on topics that they want. So one thing we did a couple months ago now was we sent out a survey for people to fill out on what would be most beneficial for them as members of Earth Ministry Washington IPL. And then from that, building our offerings for like workshops and teaching type of things on what people actually want that we either do or do not do. So one thing is seasonal programming. So just having more regular, you know, in spring, for example, we'll talk about gardening and like local pollinators or whatever that may mean. I mean, it won't be the same every year, but the topic would remain the same. And then having something for summer, fall, winter. So developing what that would look like and start trying to put that into effect. One thing that I've been working on now, which will be available at the start, somewhere in the beginning of next year, is self-guided workshops. So if you don't necessarily want one of us to come out and talk, we're creating these workshops where you will be given the tools, the resources, the discussion questions, and how to operate a workshop with multiple topics. How to do that. And we're starting off with workshops we already have. So the Greening Congregation workshop, which is one that we've had for a very long time. And then this year officially is when, was it this year? It was last year. Last year officially, we introduced the environmental justice programs. And so those two are what we're making into the self-guided workshops. So whether it's with your congregation, with your community, with your book club, whomever, on your own time and piece by piece, you're able to get through the workshops at your own pace. And then working on community outreach to new congregations, which when I started this role, I started in a completely different position, but it was doing outreach to specifically new communities, whether that's regional or faith-based, whatever it may be. So kind of getting back to who else do we want to be along with on this ride, environmental justice, what will that look like, how to get them involved, and that could shape, you know, the issues that we're talking about, the programming we do, to make it more open to the concerns of the whole state. So that is something I will be working on in the next year.
Wonderful. So coming up in Faithful Advocacy, we have our annual Faithful Advocacy Training and Legislative Agenda Briefing. That's coming up on Monday, January 8th in the evening. It'll be a Zoom event. And you're very welcome to learn more about the priorities that we've set and also think more about what advocacy means to you from your context in this wonderful foment between having people of faith and conscience grapple with what's happening right now in the legislature. So that is the day before, or the evening before, the legislative session begins on Tuesday, January 9th. Monday, January 15th, if you're interested, there is one of our priorities that is having an in-person lobby day. It's also on the MLK Day holiday. So some people, they're thinking that some children from schools might be able to attend that day because of the school holiday. Thursday, February 8th will be Interfaith Advocacy Day in Olympia, again, sponsored by Faith Action Network. We're really looking forward to that collaboration as well. And since we can give you just a taste of our legislative priorities for next year, I'll go ahead and do that now. So our 2024 legislative priorities, we have 3 priorities that we'll be following. The first is Cumulative Risk Burden Pollution Act, or CURB Act. This bill applies the HEAL Act to health impacting pollutants in overburdened communities. It creates a mandate to, 1, measure health affecting pollutants across the state, particularly in places where they're not being measured, and 2, locate communities through that measurement, locate communities with greater pollution burdens. 3, block or condition permits for new pollution in overburdened areas. And 4, provide for greater participation of frontline community members in planning and permitting. So the result over time would be reducing health impacts and lowering pollution, prioritizing places and people subject to higher pollution burden, applying environmental justice principles to pollution permitting. That's our first one. Our second one is the return of the WRAP Act. This is its 3rd year under consideration. So this thoroughly vetted bill seeks to provide curbside recycling to all Washington residents, adding incentives for sustainable packaging practices. From use through reuse, compost, recycling, or landfill or incineration, the end of use responsibility would change from residents, or which bin do I put this in, to producers through fees that favor sustainable product design in the first place. So at a time when over 50% of packaging and paper products, to the tune of $104 million in materials, are currently landfilled or incinerated, the WRAP Act would give product designers the chance to use their ingenuity to create with more sustainable and cost-effective materials. With plastics proliferating from product shelves to dumps and waterways, this bill would decrease dependence on extractive fossil fuel-based plastics. Rural areas with expensive or no recycling would receive free recycling pickup paid for through these manufacturer fees. Waste hauler jobs are safeguarded, and the bottle bill has been removed from this version. And our third of our priorities is 100% clean, otherwise known as zero emissions, school buses. So, as some of you may already know, diesel is a carcinogen, and diesel fumes and children's developing lungs are particularly susceptible to polluting hazards. To improve infrastructure and replace diesel buses, this bill presents both 1, a switch to 100% clean electric school buses, and 2, a funding source thanks to the Climate Commitment Act. It's providing funding to important things. Let's keep it. More about that in January if you're showing up to the training, January 8th. So, to improve healthy air for school children and communities around them, around schools, plus improve climate outcomes by major reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. This bill would transition over 10,000 school buses, the largest transit network in the state, to 100% clean energy. Climate Commitment Act funds are already allocated for this type of transition, and we can enable health justice for young people without other ways to get to school. We have a few additional interests: accountability for oil price gouging, community solar, and a navigator so that anybody across the state can go online or make a phone call and learn what they have access to that would be helpful in a transition to cleaner energy and conservation. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, I'm gonna pause the screen for just a second because that's a lot. And I see I'm gonna stop the share. Are there Kia, are there questions, or Sarah, are there questions that have been coming up in the chat or things that have been noted in the chat that we need to mention? Ooh, good question, Celia. Does organizational letter mean electronic letter which folks are asked to sign on? Yes, it does, and there have been some replies. Wonderful. Yep. I think we've been asked on certain one of these to sign on to coalitions who the organizations have written them themselves, and we're part of other community partners who are signing on. So
yeah, so some letters we invite you as individuals to sign on to, and there are other letters where organizations as a whole sign on. So it's like multiple organizations with huge numbers of people they're representing all signing on. So those are the ones that we're talking about in terms of organizational sign-on letters. Thanks, AC.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying, Sarah, and that question, Celia. Wonderful. And the question about congregational awards, we did it one time this year. We're planning on doing it again. Kia, would you say something quick about congregational awards? Put you on the spot.
I don't know what more to say. It was a great time. I sent the link to read all the write-ups about those who won it. And I would imagine that we continue to do this for as long as people want it, and want different types of inspiration.
It was great. It was a great time, and we gave each community was we found local potters to find a sacred vessels for each community. So whether they be communion plates or oh no, I'm gonna spice. The name just escaped me. If one of you connected to our Jewish community knows the Havdalah jars. Havdalah jars for spice jars for some of the Jewish community who were awarded. So it was an honor to do that. Well, seeing all of you and knowing that our time together is getting close to close, one of the things we wanted to do with you, yes, Thor, in just a second, I see your hand. One of the things we wanted to do with you is share a tradition that happens in colleague connections, where you all get to talk to one another about, you've heard a lot of things we've done. We'd love to hear what you've been doing and what the work you've been participating in this year that has brought you energy and excitement, maybe work that's brought you challenges and that you need support on. We'd love to hear some of that. So before I break out into rooms, Thor, I see your hand.
Yes. Did you have any discussions on the drought that was in Whatcom, Skagit, Snohomish, and King counties?
It's a good question. I think we probably have talked about it as a staff and have talked about it as different coalition partners, and yet are always looking for ways in which we can effectively support the different issues that are happening across the state. And so one of the things that we're trying to do in this coming year is strategically expand the issues that we're covering, which means that this is Thor, this is a great plug-in. I'm not sure you meant to do this, but this is a great plug-in to say that we need resources to do that, to expand our work, to be more effective in our work and cover topics that right now, as a staff with our and as a small board and small staff, that we don't have the resources to do, but we know that they're so important and we would like to do them. So, and I know you and I have talked about droughts and warming, and would love to keep talking about them and find ways that we can work together to address these things. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and I know there's so many things.
I could say something about drought, but if we don't have time, that's okay.
I know. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to prep you. Kia, would you be able to break us out in rooms while I share the question? So the question that I'd like you all to reflect on in the time that we have remaining with is, what environmental justice work are you celebrating this year? And this could be something that's personal. It could be something that's in your faith community that's greening. It could be advocacy that you participated in. It could be something that you saw and just witnessed. Maybe you didn't participate in yourself, but you witnessed it. So what environmental justice work are you celebrating this year? That's amazing. Thanks, Thor, for bringing that up. Really appreciate that. Oh my goodness. And Rachel, you've also done some good things. You're talking about good partners in Bellingham. So I think whenever we are ready, Kia, I know I put you on the spot about that, but are we ready for breakout rooms? Okay. So we're going to spend some time. You will have right about 15 minutes in breakout rooms. So 15 to 20 minutes. So there's some time to talk with one another and then really share. Thank you, Kia. I'll pause our recording for right now. Hey, y'all. It's good to see you again. And I hope the conversations went well and you heard a lot of amazing things about what you all are doing in the community. Wondering, we've got a couple minutes that would love to hear from you all to share some of the things that you've heard. So we've got about 5 minutes. Would anybody like to lift up either what you shared or what you heard? Also honoring your to tell your own story. So maybe if there's a story you heard, you could invite someone that if it's someone else's story. But I'll pause talking. What joy did you hear?
I had two people who were tree growers. And we're going to plant the trees. So, yeah.
And Catherine inspired me with taking a photograph every single day.
Every single day.
Yeah, isn't that awesome?
It's amazing.
Mm.
We had a lot of salmon joy in our group about seeing spawning salmon and celebrating salmon through the salmon journeys this year and things like that. So there's a lot of salmon joy.
Dora, see you, Chuck. Oh, Kia, go ahead.
Sorry, was someone else going to say
No,
something?
I just said I saw Thor chuckling, but I went against my own recommendation and called somebody out. I apologize, Thor. You don't have to.
Oh no, I always run in the debate of how big a subject I kick over. I'm celebrating reaching out to over 100 organizations so far this year, detailing a drought on the Mississippi watershed and dealing a drought here in Western Washington.
Yeah.
And along the way, I have found how similar this is to the walk of the apostles when they went into the Greco-Roman world.
Mm.
And you're trying to engage people in discussion about a better way to live.
of that. We're not just
So,
working for changing policies. We're working for a better way to be and live with one another.
well, the drought is a unique thing that if you do not take proactive action on it, it'll take action on you.
Mm.
Because the pattern is very well established in California. You leave a risk like that around,
Yeah,
you'll lose your insurance, you'll lose your water rights, you may even lose your house.
yeah. Thank you for that work, Thor. Yeah. I'm looking. I hope we can keep talking. I know you'll keep talking about it. I hope we keep building momentum on it. So thank you. One last offering for those. Anyone else? Jane, I see you unmuted. Did you want to?
Oh, I was part of the salmon group. We also talked a little bit about food, food scarcity versus food waste.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I'm gonna do a quick screen share just so that you can all see. Thank you so much for being present with us this evening. And of course, I didn't set it up. We'll have to go through. You'll have to quickly see all the pictures again as we move, and then too quickly, not quickly enough. There's somebody that is technologically savvy as part of this group, and it is apparently not me. But thank you, a big thank you to all of our activists, the faithful advocates, colleagues, the grassroots and the grass tops, the clergy leader, faith leaders, clergy, congregations, faithful advocates, and donors. All of this work you make possible, we make possible together. And as I said earlier, like this work, we need continued support to be able to do, to be able to bring, to collate all and condense all of this vast information that we're hearing from multiple coalition partners and bring it in ways that we're able to present concise, understandable, easily actionable items. And we need your support to do that. So in just a minute, I'll put the in the chat. Maybe I could do it from here. I'm gonna try to multitask. I used to do this when I was a pastor and having to Zoom meet during the pandemic. Anybody else? Other pastors on the call? The bit.ly link or the QR code you'll see will get you to our donation page. And we're trying to build up a sustaining donor base so that we can lean into our work to help people of faith mobilize and put their faith into action for the well-being of the communities and the environment, and to really lean into our strategic plan, which is to be a statewide organization that responds to statewide concerns like droughts, like food and agriculture and climate friendly agriculture and farming methods and forests and all of the things that we know are important to everyone, and recognizing that we need your support to do it as we do this work together. So thank you. In our closing, I would like to share a meditation. Probably most of you, or many of you maybe recognize this work, Earth Prayers. Maybe some of you have it. I see some nods. So I'll share this this meditation from Stephanie Kaza. It says this: we live by the sun, and we feel by the moon. We move by the stars. We live in all things, and all things live in us. We eat from the earth and drink from the rain. We breathe of the air. We live in all things, and all things live in us. We call to each other. We listen to each other, and our hearts deepen with love and compassion. For we live in all things, and all things live in us. We depend on the trees and animals. We depend on the earth, our minds open with wisdom and insight. We live in all things, and all things live in us. We dedicate our practice to others to include all forms of life. We celebrate the joy of living and dying, for we live in all things, and all things live in us. We are full of life. We are full of death. We are grateful for all beings and companions. In my tradition, I would say, dear ones, beloved ones, we are companions in this work, and I am grateful for you and grateful for the communities that you represent and the communities that come together to work for environmental justice, for the healing of our world, and I'm grateful that we get to do this work together. I hope that you have a good evening and the rest of your holiday season, whatever it may be. May you find moments of whatever you need in this time. And I'm looking forward to the continued work that we do together with one another. Blessings, y'all.